Hello, CactusCon. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming to my talk. And thank you to the organizers for running this awesome conference and having me back. It's actually a second time I present at CactusCon. So excited to be here. I must have done something slightly right last time. And just happy to always be sharing what we've learned and giving it back to the community. So welcome again. My name is Jorge Orchilles, and this talk is called Operationalized Purple Teaming. Now, this talk does pick up where we left off last time. And if you missed it at CactusCon 9, I gave a talk with Bryson Bort called the full purple juice, not the watered down stuff. And this covered how to run purple team exercises. Now, you may have heard of purple teaming. You may have done an exercise already, or maybe not. If you haven't, don't worry. We'll use the first intro slides here to level up and make sure that we're all talking the same language. And then from there, we'll get right into operationalized purple teaming. For that, we'll get a little bit technical as well. We are using a live and real use case on leveraging cyber threat intelligence to emulate an attack and then be able to detect and respond to it. So hopefully you're all excited or as excited as I am. I love purple teaming. I think it brings a lot of value, and let's do this. So the whole concept of purple teaming was when I looked back probably around 2014, 2015, worked at a large financial organization. I had a big team. I ran the offensive security team. There was everything from vulnerability scanning, vulnerability assessment, pen testing, red team, etc. And of course, we had a very big blue team that did security operations center and threat hunting, etc. And we also had a cyber threat intel team. And what occurred is that all these teams worked in silos. And this is what we're seeing in a lot of our organizations today. You have your blue team defending over there, the red team attacking on the other side, kind of adversarial there as far as relationships and culture. And then the cyber threat intel team trying to provide actionable threat intelligence. So here you see them depicted as the unicorns. If you haven't seen these unicorns, these are our mascot over at Scythe, where I'm the chief technology officer, and they make awesome stickers. So I'll post some info here to see if you can get some swag. But the whole point of this was these teams are working together, or working separately in silos. How can we bring them together so that they work together? And that is the concept of purple teaming. Bring them all together, not every day, but bring them together so that they collaborate and work together. So again, if you've never heard of purple teaming, let me give you a very quick intro on that. A purple team is a virtual team where multiple roles work together. The roles are cyber threat intelligence. This is a team that does research on a particular adversary, understands the adversary that is likely to attack the organization, and grabs threat intel. What attacks have these threat actors done? What are their behaviors? The red team is the offensive team that's in charge of emulating those adversaries in the organization, essentially testing the people, the process, and the technology to see if they can detect and respond to that attack before boom, right? Before impact. You always want to be left of boom. And the blue team is a catch-all phrase for the defenders. In your organization, it might be the security operations center. It might be a managed security service provider. You might have a hunt team. You might have a DFIR team that stands for digital forensics and incident response. And like I said, purple team brings everyone together. So we wrote a free resource here called the Purple Team Exercise Framework. And that covers leveraging cyber threat intelligence, preparation, exercise execution, and lessons learned, so you can continually improve. So again, we presented this last year at CactusCon. I'm going to give you a little bit more info on this, and then we're going to get to the new stuff, which is how do we operationalize this? So from the cyber threat intelligence phase, this was taken from Katie Nichols and Cody Thomas SANS Summit talk a while back, and really loved this, really implemented this in a number of organizations. So essentially, it's, if you are in cyber threat intelligence, your first thing is to understand the organization, understand the threat model, and identify adversaries that are likely to attack that organization. An adversary must have an opportunity, an intent, and a capability to attack. Once you pick a particular threat actor or an adversary that's likely to attack, then you gather threat intelligence. And the thing with gathering threat intelligence is that there's a lot of different types of threat intel nowadays, right? You've seen most of these. I'm sure you've seen the David Bianco pyramid of pain that shows different types of indicators. Something like a hash value, an IP address, a domain. Those, while technically some threat intel, we're not really interested in that. We're interested in the adversary behaviors. In the pyramid of pain, it's called TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. And this is what the threat actor does, their behaviors. So cyber threat intel needs to extract those TTPs and then map them to MITRE ATT&CK. MITRE ATT&CK is, of course, the common knowledge that we use. Used to have to explain this, but I think by now everyone understands attack, right? It stands for adversaries, tactics, techniques, and common knowledge. Really a common language between these teams that are going to work together, between cyber threat intelligence, red team, and blue team. So then we analyze and organize those. See, because the cyber threat intelligence is going to come from what they saw in an attack, and how you see an attack is not necessarily how you perform an attack. So we have to do some work there and create an adversary emulation plan. This essentially tells our sponsors and our senior management, this is what we're going to do. These are our goals. These are the objectives of the adversary. This is what we're going to test and see if we are susceptible, if we would fall for this, if we'd be impacted by this adversary. Then we emulate the adversary. Now, that does require some preparation. Purple team exercises, the prep phase generally is longer than the actual exercise. That is true for red team exercises as well. If you've ever done a red team engagement, you spend a lot of time on prep. Lots of people don't talk about that, right? Most people talk about some new cool way of doing it, some tradecraft, but there's a lot of prep that goes into this. So again, all of this is covered in the Purple Team Exercise Framework, which you can download it on GitHub. It's totally free. And I'm just summarizing this for you here very quick so we get to the operationalized Purple Team. So in preparation, we have to pitch a Purple Team exercise to a sponsor, show them the value that is going to come out of doing these exercises. We're going to have a number of preparation meetings as we bring in the people that are going to be part of the exercise. We set up the target systems. We normally do this in production because that is where you have your actual people, process, and technology. You can do this in a lab. You can do this in non-production. But if you want to test and have actual real and timely results, production is going to be the place to go. So if you do this on target systems, you need to ensure that all your security tools are on there, that you have accounts that you're going to be leveraging. And of course, the red team has to set up attack infrastructure, which is a whole nother talk, but again, covered there. The metrics. Metrics are important, and really in purple teaming and adversary emulation as a whole, we have changed the metrics that we're used to, right? If you think of a vulnerability, we have a CVE, a common vulnerability and exposure ID. It has a CVSS score, it has a priority, and that vulnerability is either open or closed. right? It's there or it's not there. It might be exploitable, not exploitable. When we talk about purple teaming and emulating adversaries and TTPs, a lot of these TTPs you can't just prevent. It's not going to be closed TTP. You're going to be able to detect that. So we have to talk about data sources. Did we have visibility? Was there an alert? Did our team see the alert? Was there a response? And then we get to a point where we're actually tracking time metrics. You read one of those defer reports, or you see a lot of time-based metrics, right? Mean time to detection, and these actors got in there and they were idle for this long. So we want to measure that. And then it comes time for the exercise. We bring everyone together. It's an exciting time. You have your blue team talking to your red team, to your CTI team, some stakeholders, some observers, and the exercise coordinator goes in, presents the adversary, says, today we're going to emulate this adversary. These are the behaviors that were observed. These are some technical details. Then you have a tabletop discussion. What do you expect to occur when this particular TTP is executed? And you document that. It's interesting to see the expectations from the different teams. Then the red team is going to emulate that adversary or that particular TTP, sharing the screen, allowing for the other teams to learn and see how an attack works. And then we swap. The blue team then shares their screen. They show what is going on, how they detect something, if there was an alert, if there was a log, maybe they go threat hunting, because it's a full knowledge exercise. If something didn't meet expectation, or you determine that you should probably have visibility about this particular behavior, then you do detection engineering, which again, it's a process of understanding an attack, understanding the data sources, and turning those on. And then this loops. You go through and do multiple TTPs. Of course, the whole point of this is value. Here we have a screenshot from PlexTrack. It's a great platform for managing not just vulnerability management, but also red team and purple team exercises. It's really cool. Shout out to our friends over there at PlexTrack. And over here on the left, you see the first time we ran this emulation, did about 20 some TTPs, and there were no alerts. No alerts means there's no response, right? Unless you have your threat hunting team that found something. As we did the purple team exercise, we were able to trigger 13 alerts, which then allowed us to train our team. Our team saw the alert, they followed their process, and they were able to respond to that threat. So that very quickly is a purple team exercise. Again, if you saw our previous CactusCon talk, this is definitely just a reminder. So we left off, we had this awesome purple team exercise and everything went great. But what happens next? Well, you can continue to do purple team exercises, maybe in a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis, right? Where you bring these separate teams together, you do an adversary emulation. These exercises can be a week long, could be a day, could be 2 hours. But what we started implementing in organizations that were maturing past these first couple of exercises was an operationalized purple team. And that's what we're going to talk about here. Something that we've implemented and seen, something that you can take home and do yourself. So what's an operationalized purple team? That's dedicated internal teams doing cyber threat intel, red team, blue team, and then working together when that cyber threat intel comes in. New threat is out there. We hear something on the news. Let's do that. As a new TTP is discovered, it's analyzed, and if it's net new, it's tested. And then we are starting to see some dedicated purple teams in some organizations, mostly in the financial sector. That, of course, is not a requirement, but we did put something out called the purple team maturity model, because now you have this process that your people are following called purple teaming, and you want to track and see how it matures and how it's improving. So that's what we're going to cover today. So let's focus on operationalized purple team. What does that look like? new cyber threat intelligence comes in. A new report was just released. Microsoft just released something, or Mandy, or FireEye, or Sophos, or whoever released this new cyber threat intel. They have observed an attack out in the wild. We look at that and we essentially spawn our team. We get and assign someone from cyber threat intel, someone from the red team, and someone from the blue team to work together. They then go and they analyze this threat intel. They're going to read through it. They're going to extract those TTPs, map them to attack if it wasn't already done by the cyber threat intel provider. And we are going to correlate this with previous tests. Let's see if anything here is net new. If it's net new, we definitely have to test it. Then we do our tabletop discussion. What are the expected detections and response to these TTPs? You document those, and then the red team goes and they emulate the attack. They show how to do the attack. Of course, this requires a bit of work from the red team, understanding how that threat performed those attacks, those procedures. And then we have our blue team doing detection engineering. Now that they saw the attack, they can enable the logs and create alerts and then train their team to be able to see this. Now, the original purple team exercise framework did not cover that. So about a month ago, we released version 2 of the purple team exercise framework. That's open for comment. We actually put it out on GitHub, make it easy for anyone to read it, but also contribute to it. So these steps are all outlined in this free framework that you can download on GitHub. So let's do a use case here. Like I said, I like doing actual real life things. So step 1, new cyber threat intelligence comes in. One of my favorites is the DFIR report. The DFIR report is free. You can sponsor them, and I actually recommend that you do if you start leveraging the information that they have. So the DFIR report, you go to the dfirreport.com, they release these reports of real intrusions by real attackers. And you read that right there on the headline, right? The truth behind the intrusion. And I love them because they provide lots and lots of detail. So it's December 13th. DFIR report comes out. We now can begin our operationalized purple team process. Now, threat intel doesn't just have to come from free and open source resources, right? It could come from the internal cyber threat intelligence team, from internal vendors, from red team. Maybe the red team found something new, a new method of doing something. Cool. That's what the red team does, right? So it could come from them, or it could come from the blue team. Maybe the blue team observed a new attack that isn't a MITRE attack, right? That happens actually to be added as a technique in MITRE attack. It must have been seen in the wild. So we have a little bit of a chicken and egg problem where maybe the red team found something new. Maybe the blue team observed a real attacker doing something new. You can still work with that. It doesn't actually have to be on attack. Attack is a great way to start. Now, if you do see something new, do contribute it to attack. Attack has a sightings, so you can actually let them know, and it'll get added to the next version of MITRE attack. So regardless of where the CTI comes from, it has now triggered our process, our operationalized purple team process. So we notify the purple team. You can do this through a ticketing system. You can do it through a tracker. There's multiple ways of actually implementing this, right? From project management tools to even your vulnerability management solution that you currently have, to any ticketing system, right? So however you want to integrate it, you notify everyone that's considered part of the purple team that a new CTI has come in. Then you can either self-assign this. So I'm looking, I see, oh, look, something new came in. Oh, I like the DFIR report. let me assign this to myself. Or of course, a manager can assign this to you. Essentially, you need cyber threat intel, red team, and blue team together. So new CTI comes in, we initiate the purple team. All right. So we have initiated the purple team. That was the Power Rangers. If you have no idea what you just saw, it's okay. It's how I insert comic relief and a chance to have a sip of water while you all watch a quick video. So we have brought the red, blue, and CTI teams together. Our next step here is to analyze and organize the TTPs. And in that step, we need to extract the tactics, techniques, and procedures, the behaviors, and map them to MITRE ATT&CK. So one of the reasons I like the DFIR report is that they do some attack mapping for you. Over here on the right, you actually can see this is the bottom of that report, and I'm going to demo it here shortly. And there's already some MITRE ATT&CK mapping. Now, the thing with MITRE ATT&CK is that these are techniques, not procedures, right? TTPs are actually three different things. Tactics, which are the goal of the attacker to gain initial access. A technique, spear phishing with a link, and an actual procedure of how did they do that spear phishing email, right? So while mapping to MITRE ATT&CK is great, in purple teaming and adversary emulation, we actually need procedure level details. And the DFIR report is great at providing those procedures, but they're not provided in a consumable way. We have to consume them and go through our process, which I'm going to show you here. So let's just read a little bit from the top here. The malware Bazaar loader was delivered to an endpoint via email, which included a link to OneDrive. The OneDrive link directed the user to download a file that was a zip, which included an ISO inside. Once open, mounted on the user system, it was determined the ISO contained a link file and a DLL. The link file masqueraded as a document, enticing the user to click and open it. Once the user executed the link file, the Bazaar loader infection was initiated. That's a great paragraph. It tells us a lot. Were you able to pick out all the TTPs from there? Spear phishing link, right? With a OneDrive. There was an ISO file. There was a zip file. Those are defense evasion techniques. There was a link file, which required user execution. That's another technique. And there was a DLL. So quite a bit of TTPs there, just in that one paragraph. So let's take a look at some more graphical views. So the DFIR report also provides a timeline. We can see here the original execution was from a downloaded Bazaar loader zip from OneDrive that had a ISO mounted, has a DLL executed, and it had C2, command and control to some IP on port 443. Oh, C2 as well. And down on the bottom, we also have another image that this ISO file had a DLL and a documents.link. That documents.link ran run DLL32.exe with a DLL called shared files.dll and an entry point of basic score. Okay, so let's analyze this for real now. We read through this and let's break it down. Over on the right, we have our actual procedures. So tactics, the goal, initial access. That was through phishing. a spear phishing link. And the procedure was the malware was delivered to an endpoint via email, which included a link to OneDrive. Then there was an ISO. An ISO is a defense evasion technique. And we know this because I've actually done some work on that one before. So the TTP for that is actually 1553005, which is subvert trust controls, mark of the web bypass. Mark of the web. We'll talk about this in a little bit. Then there was that link ran or run DLL 32. There's user execution, right? The user actually has to double click that link. So we have user execution there. And then C2 was set up over 443. So command and control is the tactic, and the technique is application layer protocol over web protocols, HTTPS. And then Bazaar loader was observed executing the well-known Windows discovery commands 10 minutes after execution. So let's take a look at this. Let's jump into our first demo here. And again, shout out to the DFIR report. We read this first paragraph here and extracted a number of TTPs, right, at the procedure level. But we can continue to read the case summary. And as we go down, there's a timeline, which is fantastic, right? Covers 3 days of this particular attack. And then it's broken down by tactic, initial access via OneDrive link. We get more information about that. When the link is downloaded, it's a .zip. And actually here we see the name of the zip, new-documents-2005. 2005, that doesn't sound like new documents, but okay. I guess it worked in this particular instance. And then that brings down an ISO. Then we have execution, another tactic. How did that happen? We see run DLL. And look, here we actually see the shortcut. It's a documents is the name, and it has a little documents icon, but the target actually runs run DLL 32 with pulling in that shared DLL and the entry point of basic score. This is all going to be important for emulation. And here we have that image I showed and 2 of the C2 IPs. Are the IPs important to us? No, right? We're not going to use those IPs in our attack. We're not simulating, we're emulating. And so there's a bit of that. There's persistence. And actually, it isn't all the way until we get to discovery that we actually find the next set of steps. See, the attacker did discovery 10 minutes in, but in this threat intel report, we actually had to scroll down quite a bit to find that that is when they did that, right? And here we have some discovery. Then they executed Cobalt Strike. Surprise, surprise, it's a ransomware attack. Of course they used Cobalt Strike. And then they ran some other procedures. And then on the second day, they did more discovery. So while the DFIR report breaks this up in MITRE attack tactics, we still need to analyze and organize these in our method. So just so you see how I go through these, I break them down by tactic, technique, and procedure and build them out in a time method. So this is the table I showed earlier. We wrapped up with the Bazaar loader observed executing 10 minutes later. That is a time-based evasion. Then discovery, multiple commands ran, some with typos. And then they executed run DLL 32 again. Then they did process injection. Then they did discovery again, etc. So as we go through this, this is what I mean by analyze and organize. So that is a little quick demo there on the threat intel part. We have built this essentially spreadsheet because that's the #1 InfoSec tool used. The top tool ever used by any InfoSec professional is a spreadsheet, right? So we've built that out. And now the question is there anything net new here? Well, they use Cobalt Strike. We've tested that, right? Until our heart's content. Hopefully everyone can detect some Cobalt Strike in their environment. But really, spear phishing, we've done that. Run DLL32, you should have definitely tested that one already, have some detections in place because lots of ransomware uses Run DLL32. Really, the one that stood out here was that they used an ISO image. What is an ISO image? How does an ISO image work? Thought an ISO image was like to burn CDs back in the day. For those young folks out there, before streaming, we had CDs and we used to burn them. It was a lot of fun, and not burn with fire. Burning is building a CD. All right, I'm getting too much into that. Hopefully everyone knows what a CD is. And we use ISO images for that, right? To this day, you can download an ISO image for, say, installing the latest version of Windows. Nowadays, you would put down a USB, boot your machine up, you install from that ISO image. Now, the interesting part of an ISO image is that it is not formatted in NTFS. NTFS is the file system structure that was introduced with Windows NT. That stands for New Technology. Came out around 2000. Yeah, poor naming convention. But we still use it today. The NTFS file system allows for alternate data streams. Alternate data streams means that you can put different streams into what appears to be a single file. And that is how Mark of the Web works. See, when you download something from the internet and you try to run it on Windows, you generally get a message, right? It's called Smart Screen, pops up and says, hey, you downloaded this from the internet. Are you sure you want to open that? And of course, everyone clicks, yeah, open it anyway. But it's a defensive mechanism, right? You might download a document. You open that document, it says, we're not enabling editing here because you downloaded this from the internet. That is done through Mark of the Web. Now, an ISO file is not formatted in NTFS, and therefore it cannot use alternate data streams, which means the file cannot be marked as being downloaded from the internet. Whoa, cool. So attackers are putting their malware in ISO images so that they get around this control. And that is technique 1553.005, subvert trust controls with Mark of the Web bypass. So essentially you create an ISO, you put in a shortcut, you put in a DLL, the shortcut executes run DLL32, you then zip that ISO and you upload it to a public OneDrive link. OneDrive, you've probably tested this. You either allow access to OneDrive or you don't allow access to OneDrive. You may be monitoring OneDrive. If you are, bless you, because there's a lot of stuff on OneDrive, right? So we look and we see, have we tested this before? Now, if you haven't tested this before, where would you look to find a test? Atomic Red Team. Atomic Red Team is a free project sponsored and ran by Red Canary. Actually, shout out to Adam Mashinchi, who's one of the folks over at Red Canary. And they have a bunch of simple tests, an atomic test, one test that allows you to emulate these. So you go to Atomic Red Team, look up this TTP, T1553.005, and it's not there. All right, guess we got to build it ourselves. So we move on to step 3. Step 3, we have a tabletop discussion. You say, look, what's net new here? ISO files. Adversaries are using ISO files now. So what's our visibility there? How can an ISO file get into our organization? Well, you can click on a link and download an ISO from the internet. You can click and download a zip from the internet, or maybe from an internal site. What about an ISO attached to an email? Do we have detections there? Where would we have those detections? Well, maybe our external security provider can block ISO files from coming in, because why would an ISO file come in, right? Or maybe it is used. Do we have any detections, right? And you brainstorm these. Once the ISO is in, though, all it takes is a user double clicking it. and that mounts the ISO. Any detections there? What about executing something from an ISO and unmounting the ISO? And you have this tabletop discussion with the team, with the purple team. Then step 4, you emulate the attack, right? This would be the red team. Has to figure out how to create an ISO, right? So if you do a little bit of Googling, you find some stuff. Twitter is one of my favorite places. So shout out to Matt Grabber at MattFestation, who posted some stuff on this. Outflank also talked a little bit of Mark of the Web. I wrote a blog post on Scythe about Mark of the Web, but we actually hadn't done it through ISO. So did a little bit of work there to figure that one out. And what about creating a link file? Most people know how to create a shortcut. Well, my friend Jean-Francois, over at Trusted Second, a SANS instructor for the purple team curriculum, teaches Security 699, Advanced Purple Teaming, wrote a little tool on generating links, generating little .link files. So we do some work. We see some folks have done some of this, and we put it all together. That's what I've done here. Essentially, wrote a step-by-step of how to emulate this. You set up command and control using HTTPS on 443, and through your C2, you generate a DLL payload. If you don't know how to do that, you need to go watch or look up the C2 matrix. We show that in multiple C2s, not the scope here, right? Then I actually created a folder and a GitHub repo where you can download and do this very easily. It uses a project called Folder to ISO. So shout out to that. Essentially, it's going to grab everything that's in a folder and convert it into an ISO. So you're going to put your DLL into that folder. You're going to create a shortcut called documents. You're going to set the target. Then you're going to run folder to ISO. It's going to create this ISO. You then zip it. You then upload it to OneDrive and get a public link to it. You put that link in a spear phishing email. You send it across. Someone opens that email. They click on the link. It will download a zip. They unzip the document. They double click the ISO to mount it. And then they double click the shortcut to execute. Yeah, lots of user awareness training would go a long way in this attack, but it's a long chain. So let's do that one here real quick. All right. I've actually already created the shared files.dll with the entry point that we mentioned. We are going to move this over to the source directory that a folder to ISO. So we put the DLL there. Here is our documents link. Here's the properties of it. We can see here it executes run DLL32 with shared files.dll and the entry point of basic score. So we're going to want to go into this directory on a command prompt. Okay, we're in that directory. And now we're going to copy that. So copy and paste. Again, this is all provided for you. Here it is, run DLL32. Here's the one-liner. Here we see it run, and it would have created an ISO right here in our downloads folder. So we now need to zip this. So you can just do send to compressed zip folder. And there you go. Now we take this, upload it to OneDrive, get a public link, send it as a phishing email. We're going to skip that step again. For phishing, let's move this out to here. All right, so this is one machine called Helios. I have a C2 running over here. This is Sky. This is a machine that is our victim. We have placed this over in our desktop as if we download it. We double click the zip file. It has an ISO. We double click the ISO. It mounts it as a drive. And if the user double clicks documents, nothing happens, right? Of course, we know something's happening in the background, but the user can actually close all that and they have no idea what's going on. If we go over to our C2, we actually have a new system. Sky just ran in, process ID 30366, and then we have a shell, and of course, we do everything else, right? But everything else is not in scope of this particular attack. We just did the net new part, right? So we show this attack off to our blue team, and our last step here is detection engineering. So in detection engineering, again, it's a process. There's a great detection engineering workshop by Chris Peacock. He's at Secure Peacock. He's actually runs it every month on how to do detection engineering. Again, kind of out of scope of this, but it's another process that the blue team follows. They come up with a hypothesis. For example, an ISO file downloaded from the internet by a non-IT user is suspicious. An ISO file sent via email is suspicious. An ISO mounted by a non-IT user is suspicious, right? And shout out also to Cybermonk on Twitter. Great person to follow as well. We do a lot of back and forth and Twitter-based purple teaming. So I was working with Chris and I said, hey, Chris, you got a Sigma rule for this. And of course, being a contributor to Sigma, Chris Peacock from my team has a lot of knowledge on this and found this one quite quick. So it's a Sigma rule. If you've never used Sigma, it's great. It allows us to build these rule sets that you can import into basically any control you have, any SIM you have, right? You can put it as Elastic, as Splunk, wherever you want. But as you read through this, it's not exactly what we're looking for. This detects the amount of an ISO image on an endpoint, and it tells you the log source you need, which is important for detection engineering. So when we do detection engineering, we need to make sure that we're actually logging what we need to. Do we have that data source? Is it logged locally? And of course, you might have different log sources here, right? One is the mounting of an ISO, but what about the downloading of an ISO? That would be in your proxy. An email with an ISO attachment, that would be in your email. Antivirus, no, antivirus isn't going to catch anything, is it? Your EDR, does your EDR detect this? It should. It might have the capability to, but have you turned it on, right? Biggest problem with EDR is that it's not something you just plug in, right? It takes people and process to turn things on, tune them for your environment. Or Sysmon logs, right? Then if you log locally, is it logged centrally? Is it sent somewhere so that you can do threat hunting at scale? And then can you build alerts that are fine-tuned and do not create a lot of noise? Well, over here on the right, Randy Pragman, who works over at Binary Defense, actually, again, Twitter purple teaming, posted this and showed me how they were detecting this and getting alerts at their managed detection and response solution. It's a MSSP of detection and response. They showed the alert, and then now that you have an alert, you repeat this so that your team, when they see this alert, they know how to respond to it, right? So again, shout out to Randy. Lastly, we just built something new. Let's contribute back, right? You did all this work. Why not put it out there? I mentioned earlier, I looked in Atomic Red Team. It wasn't there. So I did the work, and then I worked with Carrie and Adam. So shout out to both of them at Red Canary. Carrie is one of the main maintainers of Atomic Red Team. So shout out to her. Very, very helpful. If you want to contribute to Atomic Red Team, it's a free resource. Least you can do is contribute, right? If you use it. So we put that out there, and now anyone can run and do this. So once you start operationalizing your purple team, you can start tracking the maturity level, right? This is, again, process show to your stakeholders that their investment in purple teaming is paying off, apart from having better detection times and not getting impacted. How is the team actually doing? And this is something that we built internally. The purple team maturity model was built by Tim Schultz, who works with me at site. And a lot of the work here, as you saw, wasn't just me. Cyber threat intel with Natalie Cano from my team, detection engineering from Chris Peacock, and we evaluate ourselves on how we're improving. So to wrap up, purple team can be applied a bunch of ways. Most organizations start with a purple team exercise. They do a couple of these. You can do larger exercises, smaller exercises, and then you can operationalize the purple team. Now that that collaboration has been built, you can trigger it when new TTPs come out, following our process of analyzing and organizing it, tabletopping it, emulating, and detection engineer. And you rate yourself and improve through the maturity model. Now, if you like this stuff, there's more content available on Threat Thursday. This is a free community resource. Essentially, it's a blog series along with adversary emulation plans. We introduce an adversary, consume the cyber threat intel, map it to MITRE ATT&CK, present an adversary emulation plan, share the adversary emulation plan with you on our community threats GitHub. It is the largest public repository of adversary emulation plans available for you right there. Then we emulate the adversary. We cover detection and response, and of course, all free to the community. So all that is done because we love giving back. If you want to learn more about Purple Team and do some formal training, we have a free Purple Team workshop. It runs at least once or twice a month. So head over to site.io/purple-team-workshops, completely free. It's about 3 hours. You get your own lab environment. You don't have to pay cloud fees because Site pays them for you. So again, just community contributions that we love. Tim Schultz has an Operation Purple course available. And then, of course, SANS has 2 Purple Team courses, Security 599, Defeating Advanced Adversaries, Purple Team Tactics and Kill Chain Defenses. That one's more around preventing. And then Sec 699, Purple Team Tactics, Adversary Emulation for Breach Prevention and Detection. That one's 50% red, 50% blue. And the blue part is all detection. No talk of prevention because you can only prevent so much. It's inevitable that someone's going to get in. Our goal is to detect and respond to them faster than their impact. I always put references. I did not do any of this alone. Purple Team Exercise Framework is free. Shout out to the DFIR report for providing the CTI here. On site, we put this community threat out. So not just that particular initial access, but everything from the DFIR reports available there. Shout out to everyone on Twitter that's helped out. Red Canary, Jean Mays, Cybermonk, the Sigma Project, Chris Peacock, Tim Schultz. Thank you all. And I put my About Me page at the end because if you're still here, you still care, I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Jorge Orchilles, the Chief Technology Officer at Site, an author and co-creator of the Purple Team Exercise Framework, the C2 Matrix, the SANS Red Team course. I contribute to MITRE ATT&CK, Atomic Red Team, CVSS version 3 and 3.1, the Global Financial Markets Association Thread-Led Pen Test Framework, and I'm a fellow at ISSA and a technologist fellow at the National Security Institute. Thank you again for your time. I will take your questions on Discord and have a wonderful day. Thank you, CactusCon. You all rock. Really appreciate you putting this together. And we'll talk on Discord. Have a good one.